Well, hello. My name is Reed. I'm going to be your presenter for the day. Welcome to the webinar, How to Be a Slack Workflow Hero. It's brought to you by Unido.io and the Slack community itself, more specifically, the Slack community of Montreal. Go Montreal! All right, so you're probably sitting there wondering, who is this guy? Why is he presenting and cracking jokes about Montreal? Well, my name is Reed, as I said, and I'm the community manager at Unido. Unido is a workflow integration solutions provider. It's also a low-code platform, much like Slack. And if you would like to find out more, you can find out more at unido.io, or you can reach us on Twitter or on LinkedIn. If you'd like to get a hold of me on LinkedIn, you can find me at linkedin.com/readandwrite. Or ironically, if you get a hold of the company, you'll probably be coming through me as well. So we're going to get into it. First thing, I want to take a second and just define a couple of terms. We're going to use the words low code and the terms low code and no code interchangeably for the rest of this webinar. And yeah, that's about that. So low barrier to entry, high ceiling. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's really easy to use Slack. Almost anybody can pick up Slack and have a conversation with a coworker or a friend or whoever they want to have a conversation with. But you would think that it would be really hard to build applications within Slack because, well, computer programming is hard. It's elusive. Not a lot of people know what's going on. I don't know if I could necessarily build a program, but the modern workflow solutions have been enabling us to do this with low code solutions, right? They've been enabling the end user to come up with unique solutions specifically tailored towards their issues and what they're facing. These things can save us sometimes 2 minutes by copying a certain a certain message over into a different channel just to keep everybody up to speed. Sometimes it could save us a huge amount of time if you're looking for something specifically that might be shared around. It might be spread around in a half dozen different containers throughout your workflow. Sometimes maybe you can just use a little Slack workflow to put everything in one channel together. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is part of customer-led growth is what we're talking about. That means that finally companies are enabling users to build it themselves. We used to ask ourselves a handful of years ago when it was still in the product-led growth phase. We used to ask ourselves, what can this program do? What can this program do for me? Now we go into it and we ask ourselves, what can I do with this program? Because the level of customizability has gone through the ceiling in recent years. And I think that's partly due to education, and it's partly also due to supply and demand, the lack of developers in the world. But it's a double-edged sword as well. These tools are enabling users to become more and more comfortable and knowledgeable about the way code is built without actually having to go in and code themselves. Now, it's quite a normal thing now for somebody to understand an if-then statement, and that's because of the low-code revolution. So yeah, the low barrier to entry and the high ceiling, that's what's really driving the customer-led growth that we're seeing today from Slack. And as I said, it comes out of a need for the elusive developer. So what do I mean when I say developer? I mean somebody who is fluent in several computer languages and is also an expert of their chosen field of computer sciences, because there are lots of fields of computer sciences. So a developer, that's kind of like a vague definition, but to be an amateur developer, you only really have to be semi-fluent in one language to be able to develop a program. I have a friend who plays with C+ a little bit, and he's not terribly fluent, but he can build little things going into the program. With the programming language. However, if you would like to be employed by a company as a professional developer, you're expected to be completely fluent, as I said, in several coding languages and be an absolute expert in your field. So when you're employed as a developer, you're generally employed to build and maintain some sort of code, not necessarily always build, not necessarily always maintain, but you're going to be doing kind of both of those things. So that's what I mean by not all devs are created equal. Now let's think about why they're so rare. It's not just because some are better, some are more knowledgeable than others that they're rare. No, it's because there are almost 8 billion people in the world. And of those people that can code on any basic level, well, there are around 40 million people. I would fit into that, and I am really not a computer programmer. I can update a Linux computer through the command line, saying things like sudo apt-get update in the terminal. And that is really not a code that's going to build me anything fancy, but that means super user do apt get the update and install it. So that puts me into that 40 million number, and I am relatively useless with actual coding. So how many people can actually build and implement and maintain systems on a computer as a professional dev, right? Almost the entire world is reliant on computers. We all use, probably 7 billion of the 8 billion people, I haven't looked that figure up, are reliant on them in some aspect or another. So how many people can actually build and implement code? Between 18 and 20 million presently, which is unbelievably low. The odds of meeting somebody with an extra working digit are relatively similar to the odds of meeting somebody with a developer. That is a developer. Of course, that statistic also depends on if you're in Silicon Valley or not, I suppose. But I digress. Developers disappear into the woodwork like Homer Simpson whenever you need something built. So we're just going to build it ourselves from now on using Slack. We're going to be our own software engineers today. When you open up a conversation, or a channel, you should see on the left-hand side of the chat box where you would type in a little plus sign. So if you click on the plus sign and then type in workflow builder, because if you click on that plus sign, you can send GIFs, you can send photos from there. There's lots of things you can do from that little plus sign. But for today's purposes, we'll just type in workflow builder. Type that in, you're going to get the page just before this one. Actually, and you can type create your first you can click on create your first workflow. Then you're going to get this choose the way to start this workflow. This is where you really have to start making decisions about how you want to implement your code and start thinking like a developer. Do you want it to start with a shortcut? So just a simple click, much like a application on your desktop would then initiate after being double clicked? Do you want the application to initiate when a new channel member joins a channel? This is a really practical solution when you want to do onboarding. Onboarding is a huge time suck. Both for the company onboarding the person and the person doing the onboarding. It's very difficult for the person to find where all of the information they're supposed to be ingesting is, and companies often have information spread around. So what is a great, easy task to do here is to just, create an onboarding channel where you can say hi to people. And when somebody joins your marketing channel, for instance, you can send them over to the resource channel as well. And then they'll know exactly where everything is. That's kind of a digression there. Emoji reactions are another great way to initiate a workflow. And I know that sounds a little silly, but we use emoji reactions to organize and keep track of due dates and project statuses. So we often will put a yellow banana on a project that might be slipping. We're not sure if we're going to make the deadline or not. We'll put a yellow banana on it because you can slip on a banana peel. If a project has been halted, or we're not going to make the deadline, or it's just been descoped completely, we'll put a little red tomato next to it. And then if we have a project that's like good to go, mint, nobody else worry about this, we'll put a little green apple next to it. And what this allows us to do, aside from having a channel that's just full of fruits and vegetables, is to curate that information so we can look and have a nice snapshot of what's up to date and what's not. The way you would do that is you go in, select say the banana emoji, what's slipping, and tell the workflow that you want the banana emoji to go fly over to the slipping channel, and then you'll have a nice screenshot of everything that has a banana emoji on it. I know that sounds silly, but it's a great way to keep track. Schedule date and time. That's another trigger you can use that is fantastic. We use several of these a day at Unito. We use them for the daily scrum in the morning. Something just pops up and goes, hey, what's everybody working on? Since we're working asynchronously in a hybrid model, it's important to stay congruent and up to date, everybody on the same page. So we just have a nice little post pop up every morning. Hey, what's everybody working on? What's going on? So we're all on the same page. Before weekly meetings, we have one pop up that goes, hey, don't forget to fill out your information in the weekly meeting in Asana, stuff like that. So yeah, for the purposes of right now, we're going to ignore webhooks. Don't worry too much about that. Just picture Spider-Man and Captain Hook. No, I'm just joking. There are also, I forgot to mention at the start, there are also a ton of templates and resources on Slack's website and on glitch.com as well. Both of those are full of fantastic, not just solutions, but also inspiring ideas as to how to get started. And I highly suggest going through both glitch.com slash Slack and Slack's template, workflow builder template pages. There are some really great ideas there. Things I'll let you discover, but there are lots of ways to save time there. So we're going to continue building this workflow because I've already digressed a little bit. Once you select the trigger for your workflow, there are two main ways you can run the bot, if you will. The application bot, we're going to use those words interchangeably as well. You can either send a form or a message, and that sounds rather limiting. However, it's really not once you think about it, because you can then have multiple steps by including a button. Okay, so you're like, cool, I can send a message and then include a button to a form. Yeah, but you can also include variables, which is gargantuan, because then you can start doing some really high level stuff. We won't get too deep into this, but some of the variables you can choose are like the channel that was joined, the person who joined the channel, the time the workflow started. That might seem random, but then take a step back, be creative, and think, okay, I could use this for, well, personally, one thing I use it for, I'll give you an example of that, is when we have a new employee come on at Unido, we have a little form that goes out to them. They fill out a couple of things about themselves. Then as soon as they're finished with that form, it automatically gets sent over to their manager in the form of a message, who has to synthesize that in a little bit of information that they've been given into a little blurb that we can write about the employee and then post it on social media. Once that's finished, they send it over to me and I just plug it into our HubSpot. See, that bot did a lot of work and saved a lot of communication. And it ultimately delegated the tasks for us. So yeah, there are a bunch of different ways you can play around with putting variables in the form, putting variables in the message, calling to each other, calling to several forms, stuff like that. Some really good examples of stuff to do with the form as well is if you want to be checking out equipment or anything like that. It's fantastic. We're going to move on a little bit because I don't want to get too stuck for time, but we're going to go into webhooks, that thing I told you to completely ignore a while ago. What is a webhook, you might be asking yourself? It is a really lightweight form of an API that allows two applications to interface together. An API is an application programming interface. And that might seem like it's what a programmer would use to interact with a program, but it's actually what programs use to interact with each other. And a webhook is how they call each other, in a sense. They're a little bit complicated, and you do need a basic level of coding to be able to implement a webhook. That's why we're talking about low code and no code interchangeably today. You do need a little bit of knowledge on how to implement code. What you do have access to, though, is a ton of blueprints, tutorials, all sorts of workshops from Slack. So much fun stuff that will really get you going. And if you want to spend that handful of hours, possibly days, possibly weeks, depending on what you're trying to implement to figure out the webhook, then go right ahead, be my guest, because the world does need more developers, and any knowledge we can take in like that is super valuable. So yeah, there might as well, you might find some templates that are very close to what you actually want to do, or maybe all you have to do is change out a URL or something like that. But you won't know if you don't look. So go have a check out on Slack's website and see check out what they've got as far as templates for the workflow builder. And then once you've completely mastered and built all of the bots possible in Slack, I encourage you as much as humanly possible to go check out all your other programs in your workflow. A huge number of them are low code solutions as well. You've got your CRMs, HubSpot, Salesforce. Both of those are absolutely powerhouses as far as the things you can do to create small little bots like this. Again, not things that do that are going to completely do your day of work for you, but things that can automate little programs. You got Airtable, your databases, project management stuff, Google Sheets, Asana, all of these you can build really, really, really basic bots with by implementing rules and stuff like that. So go ahead, create as many of those as you can and save as much time as you can in the day, because then that's going to let you focus on actual important work instead of busy work, which is essentially just trying to organize your working life. Once you build a whole bunch of bots like this, you're still going to find yourself having to flip between this program and HubSpot and then back to Slack. This is where webhooks could come in. I suggest a much easier solution, which doesn't take a whole lot of crying and learning, is something along the lines of Unito, a workflow integration solution that is all in itself no code, where you can have a drop-down menu, set up exactly how you want a workflow to work, and then connect the bots you've created in Slack and all these other workflow programs. That's where the real beauty comes in, and that's where you can save huge chunks of time. It's not just where you can save huge chunks of time, it's also possibly where you can start building a unicorn, but we'll get there. As I mentioned a while ago, I highly encourage everyone to start learning to code. I am learning myself. I'm really not very advanced. As I said, I'm about 4 courses into the Harvard EDX CS50 course, which is a completely free computer science course. It's a university level. It's, I believe, 12 lectures long. And it's one of the best courses I've ever taken. The lectures are fantastic, and they give examples that hit close to home on really complicated issues sometimes. And it's just a really, really pleasant learning experience. And you can go at your own pace. Oh, and did I mention it's absolutely free? That's the best part. My favorite word in the language. That's free. Check it out. Udemy is also a great resource if you want to learn about coding. It's a bit more than free, but it is a really well-respected certificate if you're looking to get into professional coding. So is Code Academy. That's a great resource if you want to get up to speed. Some people might already have a very basic knowledge and a really big ego, and like I did before I realized I wanted to go to take a course. It's easier. I was trying to learn through communities, and it is really helpful. You can get lots of information out of communities. However, you still need to do a lot of research on your own. So depending on what kind of person you are, maybe you would enjoy checking out the Mozilla Developers Network or the GitHub community or dev.to, stuff like that. They're all great resources and fantastic developers on all of those communities, and they will help you as much as they possibly can. One last thing I want to bring up as well is Scratch. Scratch.mit.com, I believe, is the name of the website. And that's a tool created by the Michigan Institute of Technology to teach coding. And it is awesome. If you are maybe on the other end of the spectrum, away from somebody who wants to go learn in a community, maybe you just want to learn no code, but you want to learn how to logically structure your arguments and your code in itself. Excuse me, not arguments. Maybe you want to learn to logically structure your code. So Scratch is a great tool for that. It's plug and play. It's basically just Lego with code. And I think it's fascinating. It's got like if-then statements you can stick in and all sorts of random when this, all sorts of statements like that. Stick them together. You can make little video games out of it. You can make short films. It's really impressive, and it's a great way to boost your confidence while in a very low risk environment. You're not going to accidentally send everybody you work with a message or something like it might happen in Slack if you make some sort of error. But I highly suggest that if you want to just learn about the logical progression of coding. So, excuse me, we are never going to be able to replace the devs, and that's why I'm trying to drive home that you should learn how to code. They created these tools for us, not, yes, they did create these tools for us. They created these tools for us not because they were bored, but because they needed to alleviate their workload a little bit. We, in the tech sector, so many asks are made of developers, and they have to say no all the time. So they created a way for us to streamline our own processes. And that's exactly what we do. I've been saying this for a while, you can sit at your computer all day long, clicking, copying, pasting, moving stuff around when you have a conversation here or there, and or you can streamline it, make your life easier. And you can go a little farther even, because we are at an unheard of point in history. Each and every person in this webinar watching this later on has the ability to go pick up a whole bunch of free, go download a whole bunch of free workflow solutions onto your computer and create something unique out of each and every one of those with no code solutions. And then you can start hooking them together. And then you can start really creating a product. You could build $1 billion tech company without any developers. We are already seeing tech companies without developers. It's only a matter of time before one explodes. And I really hope that it's started by somebody that's in this webinar or watching it. And so I hope this has inspired you. I hope you have already clicked on create your first workflow while I was talking, while I was droning on, or I hope you click it very soon, if not. And thank you for attending. We're going to have a little question and answer period. So I invite you all to stick around for that. Have a wonderful day.